I, Alex, had barely opened the door to the old house when a wave of childhood memories hit me. The wooden floors creaked, the walls smelled of fresh paint, and sunlight gently fell on the old furniture. This house had been our family nest for so many years, but I hadn't felt like a part of it for a long time. Things changed when I left for university, but this summer I was forced to come back. Dad had gone to Europe on business, leaving Mum and me alone. My mother, Helen, had always been a vibrant person. Her energy could brighten even the greyest day, but lately she looked tired. I noticed it when she stepped out of the car, her hand gripping the keys a little longer than usual. She smiled, but I could tell it was a bit strained. "Alex, I'm so happy we'll be here together. This summer will be special," she said, hugging me. Special? I wasn't sure. To me, this place always smelled of stale curtains and long evenings spent cleaning the yard. But I was glad to be away from the hustle of campus life. This summer was supposed to be a time to reset, a time for myself. Mum and I spent the first few days settling in. Old photo albums, books, and even some forgotten toys from my childhood found their places. Sometimes I caught myself enjoying this time together, though I'd never admit it to her out loud. On the third day, Mum suggested we have a picnic in the garden. She was full of enthusiasm, with a basket in hand and a hat on her head, looking like a character from a 1950s movie. Reluctantly, I agreed. To be honest, I was more in the mood to just lie on the couch and listen to music, but her smile made me change my mind. As we spread out the food, she began telling stories from her youth. I learned that Mum had once dreamed of becoming an actress. She talked about going to auditions, writing scripts, and even acting in amateur films with friends. "But why did you give it all up?" I asked, genuinely surprised. She fell silent for a moment, as if choosing her words. "Sometimes dreams change, Alex. Or maybe I was just afraid I wouldn't succeed. You shouldn't be afraid of your dreams. They matter." Her words struck a chord. I often doubted myself too when thinking about my future. I was passionate about music, but worried I didn't have the talent to succeed. "And you? What do you want to do this summer?" she asked, interrupting my thoughts. "I don't know. Probably just take it easy," I replied, shrugging. Mum smiled, but there was something in her eyes I couldn't quite understand. Later I realized that she had already planned something unusual to make this summer special for us. The evening ended on a cozy note. We sat on the terrace, listening to the crickets sing their night song. Mum gazed at the stars, and I thought that maybe this summer could be more than I expected. Morning in Summerwood began quietly. Sunlight filtered through the dense tree branches, softly illuminating the kitchen where Mum was making breakfast. I came downstairs lazily, still half asleep, and judging by her expression, Mum was already full of ideas for the day. "Alex, I found something amazing in the attic. You have to see it," she said with unusual enthusiasm. The attic? I looked at her skeptically. That corner of the house had always been mysterious to me. Old boxes, cobwebs, and the scent of time. But the sparkle in her eyes was infectious, and I couldn't refuse. We went upstairs. The air was filled with a mix of dust and a faint lavender aroma left over from my grandmother's things. Mum opened a big box labelled Scripts and Photos. Inside were stacks of yellowed pages, script drafts, letters, and old photos. "This is my youth," she said with a warm smile, holding up one of the photos. She was about 20, wearing a bright dress with a gleam in her eyes, posing against a stage backdrop. I was surprised at how much passion was in her eyes in these photos. Mum was different. She told stories about each picture, about the people she worked with, about the films that were never made. I listened, diving deeper into her past. "You were amazing, Mum. Why did you leave all this?" I asked again, this time with more confidence. She thought for a moment, holding a sheet of handwritten script. "You know, Alex, sometimes life doesn't go as planned. I met your father and my priorities shifted. I chose family, but I don't regret it," she said, though there was a hint of regret in her voice. Then I noticed another box set a bit apart. It was smaller but decorated with old stickers. Inside was a camera, a real retro video camera. Mum laughed when she saw my reaction. "That was my first camera. I filmed everything on it," she said. "Want to try it?" I took the camera, feeling its weight as though I were holding something incredibly valuable. Mum showed me how to turn it on and suggested we go outside to do some filming. I agreed, feeling an unusual excitement. We went outside and I started recording. Mum was shy at first, but then she relaxed, laughing, dancing and telling jokes. Her sincerity was contagious, and I found myself smiling as I filmed her. It felt like magic. We were creating something together. At one point, she came closer to watch the recording. We stood side by side, and her hand accidentally brushed mine. It was a brief moment, but it made both of us pause. Mum looked up, her face close. She smiled and quickly kissed me on the cheek. "For doing this for me," she said. I blushed but smiled back. It was a day I'd remember forever, a day when the past and present merged, giving us something real. The next day began with a warm breeze fluttering the white curtains in the living room. I was sitting on the couch with my guitar on my lap, plucking the strings. Yesterday had left me with a strange feeling, a mix of joy, nostalgia, and some inexplicable awkwardness. Mum was in her room. I heard her humming a melody, something from her youth, though I couldn't make out the words. "Alex!" Her voice sounded unexpectedly loud. "I have an idea!" Within a minute, she was standing in front of me, beaming and holding a bunch of pages. It was a script, one of the ones we found in the attic. "We could perform this," she said enthusiastically. "Imagine, you'd play the main character and I'd help direct. It would be like reliving my youth." "Mum, that's kind of weird," I said, trying to hide my embarrassment. "Weird? Alex, it'll be fun. You can try something new and I can relive my past a little. It's just an experiment." Her confidence was contagious, and despite my doubts, I agreed. We began rehearsing in the yard, turning an old bench into a stage and the garden lights into theatrical lighting. She gave directions, explaining every detail with such passion that I started to believe this could be something special. My role required a lot of emotion. In one scene, I had to play a farewell moment with the heroine whom Mum would play. We stood across from each other, rehearsing. Her eyes sparkled in the soft light of the setting sun, and her voice was incredibly sincere. "Alex, feel the moment," she said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You're saying goodbye to someone who means everything to you. You have to be honest." I took a deep breath, trying to feel it. Our eyes met, and even though it was just acting, I felt the words slip out with genuine sincerity. "You've always been an example to me," I said, surprised at how natural it sounded. She smiled, lowering her head slightly. Then, before I could say anything, she leaned in and kissed my forehead. "That was perfect," she whispered. "You're more talented than you think." The moment was brief, but something shifted. We both felt it. It wasn't strange, rather it was a new level of trust. We returned to rehearsing, but that moment stayed with me. That evening, when rehearsal ended, I sat by my bedroom window, gazing at the dark garden. There, in the quiet of the night, I realized this summer was becoming more than just a break. It was something that was changing me. It was a bridge between my present and her past, binding us closer than ever. The last days of summer in Summerwood felt like a warm goodbye to something important. The house was filled with boxes of memories, old photos, Mum's camera, and even the script we'd rehearsed. The air was filled with a mix of joy and a touch of sadness. I knew everything would soon return to normal. Dad was due back in a few days, and the usual rhythm of life would resume. Mum was sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee, her gaze fixed on the horizon, where the evening sun was starting to touch the edge of the trees. I went out to join her, feeling it was the perfect time to talk. "Are you okay?" I asked, sitting beside her. She nodded, but there was a shadow of something more in her eyes. "Yes, just thinking about how quickly this summer flew by," she replied. "It feels like we've only just started, and already it's time to go back to reality." We sat in silence. The soft breeze rustled the tree branches, and for a moment, everything around seemed perfect. "You know, Alex," she broke the silence, "this summer has been special for me. Not because we found old things or acted out a scene, but because I got to know you in a different way. I feel like I'm beginning to see the adult in you." Her words surprised me. I had never thought she looked at me that way. as an equal. "You've changed too," I said. "I always thought I knew you, but it seems this summer was enough for me to understand who you really are." She smiled, but a trace of sadness lingered in her gaze. "It's a pity we didn't do this sooner. Sometimes we get so caught up in everyday life that we forget how important these moments are." We sat a little longer, enjoying the warmth of the evening, and then Mum suddenly stood up. "Come on," she said. "I have a surprise for you." We went up to the attic, where she pointed to a box I hadn't noticed before. Inside was a compact mixer and a pair of studio headphones, professional recording equipment for music. "This is for you," she said. "I know how much you love music. You should keep going, and don't be afraid. If I learned anything this summer, it's that it's never too late to go back to your dream." I stood in shock, looking at her gift. Thousands of thoughts raced through my mind, but most of all, I felt gratitude. "Thank you, Mum," I whispered, hugging her. In that moment, I realized this summer hadn't just brought us closer, it had changed me. I was no longer the same person who had arrived here a few months ago. When Dad returned, life in Summerwood resumed its familiar rhythm, but I kept returning to those days, to the rehearsals, conversations, and how Mum and I managed to find common ground. This summer became a lesson for me. I understood how important it is to cherish the moments that bring us closer to each other. And now, every time I pick up my guitar or turn on the mixer, I remember that sunny evening on the porch and how one summer can change everything.